Let's just start with a number. How about $86,000? That's what you're looking at on average for an entry-level DevOps engineer in the United States. We're talking less than 1 year of experience.
Okay, how about this one? $143,000. Now that's the average salary once you've got a few years in the game.
And $200,000 plus? Yeah, that's where things get really interesting. We're talking senior roles, specialized engineers at the big tech companies, especially when you start factoring in bonuses and stock.
All right, so if those numbers caught your eye, you're definitely in the right place. In this explainer, we're going to lay out a complete, step-by-step roadmap to get you from wherever you are right now to landing your first high-paying DevOps job. Think of this as your guide for 2026.
So, okay, the salary is great. We get it. But beyond that, why DevOps? Why now, in 2026? Well, it really boils down to two huge factors: stability and just explosive growth. And check this out, because the story these two numbers tell together is pretty amazing. The Bureau of Labor Statistics, they're projecting 25% growth in this field. That means a flood of new jobs is coming. But at the same time, the unemployment rate for engineers who actually know their stuff is consistently under 2%. You see that? That massive gap between super high demand and low supply? That's exactly why this is one of the most secure and lucrative roles in all of tech. It's a fantastic spot to be in.
Okay, before we start building the roadmap, we need to know where we're actually going. See, DevOps isn't just one job title anymore. It's really a culture, a philosophy that spawned a bunch of different specialized roles. Let's break them down.
So here's the key takeaway from this. The DevOps engineer role, that's your foundation. That's the generalist who gets the whole workflow. Once you have that down, you can start to specialize. A platform engineer, for example, is obsessed with making developers' lives easier. They're always asking, how can I build tools to make our entire engineering team faster? Then you have the site reliability engineer, the SRE. They're obsessed with uptime, constantly asking, how do we guarantee we stay online 99.99% of the time? And then there's the DevSecOps engineer, who weaves security into every single step of the process, which, by the way, is why it's often the highest paid specialization. But for today, we're focusing on that core DevOps engineer path, because honestly, it opens all the other doors.
Now, your personal journey into DevOps really depends on your starting point. This isn't a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. It's so important to figure out which lane you're in.
We see three main paths people take. Path 1 is for software developers, and it's the fastest. Why? Because you already speak the language of code and Git. Your job is to learn the operations side, setting up Linux servers, building cloud infrastructure with code, and pulling it all together with something like Kubernetes. Now, Path 2 is for system administrators. You're already comfortable with the operations side. Your journey is all about leveling up that skill set with modern automation tools like Terraform and Docker. And Path 3? That's for the total beginner. It's the longest path for sure, but it is absolutely doable. You're just building every single skill from scratch.
Okay, let's get our hands dirty. Time to talk about the actual skills. Phase 1 is all about building your foundation. And listen, these are the non-negotiables. You cannot skip these. Trying to learn the fancy tools without this base, it's like trying to build a skyscraper on quicksand. It's just not going to work.
First thing on the list, Linux. Pretty much the entire cloud runs on it. Your servers, your containers, your automation pipelines, it's all Linux, all the way down. You don't have to be some kind of kernel wizard, but you have to be comfortable on the command line. Can you grep through log files to find an error? Can you manage permissions with chaw mode? Can you check what's running with PS and top? These basic commands have to become second nature, like breathing.
Next up, Git. Every single modern DevOps workflow starts with someone pushing code to a Git repository. It is the one and only source of truth for your infrastructure, for your application, for your pipelines. You absolutely have to master creating branches, committing your changes, handling merges, and working with your team through pull requests. This isn't optional, people. It's the very heartbeat of collaboration.
I love this analogy because it's so perfect. You don't have to be a hardcore network engineer, but you do have to understand how all your services talk to each other. What's the real difference between a public and a private IP address? What's a firewall actually do? And how do you set up security groups in the cloud? What's the whole point of a load balancer? Knowing how the roads of your digital city work is absolutely essential if you want to direct traffic and, keep it secure. All right, so once that foundation is solid, we can move on to phase 2. Now it's time to learn the specific tools that hiring managers are actively searching for on a resume. This is your professional toolkit.
Okay, these 4 tools right here,
They are the absolute pillars of modern DevOps, and they create this beautiful automated flow. Just think about it. You use Terraform to define your cloud infrastructure as code. Then you use Docker to package your app into a neat little portable container. A CI/CD tool like GitHub Actions then automates the whole build and test process every single time you push code. And finally, Kubernetes steps in to run and manage all those containers at scale. See how they all work together? It's seamless.
And that brings us perfectly to this idea of IAC, or infrastructure as code. And this concept is a total game changer. Instead of logging into a cloud console and manually clicking buttons to create a server, you write a configuration file. That file becomes the blueprint for your entire system, which makes it repeatable, version-controlled, and completely automated. And tools like Terraform are what give you that superpower.
So at this point, you're probably facing a big question. Which cloud platform should I learn? Here's my critical advice. Pick one and go deep. Don't spread yourself thin. And if you're just starting out, make it AWS. Why? It's simple, really. It has the biggest market share, which directly translates to the most job postings, the most tutorials online, and the biggest community to help you out when you inevitably get stuck.
All right, you've learned the skills, you've built the foundation. Now for the most important part, turning all that knowledge into an actual job offer. This is where strategy really comes into play.
Listen up, because this is probably one of the most crucial pieces of advice you're going to get. Hiring managers aren't looking for someone who knows a tiny bit about 10 different tools. They want someone who has deep, practical experience with the core tech we just talked about. When you get into a technical interview, believe me, depth will always beat breadth.
And one of the best ways to prove that depth? Certifications. Seriously, the right cert not only helps your resume get past those automated screening tools, but it can literally add between $8,000 and $20,000 to your starting salary. For AWS, the gold standard to begin with is the AWS Certified Solutions Architect Associate. It just proves you understand the big picture.
In this chart right here, it just drives home that earlier point about being strategic. Look, Azure and GCP are fantastic platforms, no doubt about it. But the sheer volume of jobs in the AWS ecosystem makes it the smartest place to start your cloud journey. That market dominance you see on the screen, that means more opportunities and more leverage for you.
So the big question is, how do you actually show what you can do? It is not about just listing a bunch of tools on your resume. It's about showing what you've built. I'm telling you, a portfolio with just one solid end-to-end project is infinitely more powerful than a list of 10 tools you've only done a Hello World tutorial for. I'm talking about a project where you containerize a simple app with Docker, use Terraform to build the AWS infrastructure, and then deploy it to a Kubernetes cluster with a full GitHub Actions pipeline. That's what gets you hired.
So there you have it. We've laid out the entire path, from the absolute must-have foundational skills to the core tools, all the way to the strategy for actually getting hired. The roadmap is crystal clear, the opportunity is massive, and the demand has honestly never been higher. The only question left is the one right there on your screen.